Imagine a silent field in ancient Greece. The sun had barely risen when the Spartans, known for their relentless discipline and legendary courage, lined up in formation. For centuries, their phalanx seemed indestructible. Soldiers trained from childhood to never retreat marched as a single wall of bronze and iron, crushing any enemy who dared to challenge them. But on that morning in 371 BCE, in a village called Leuctra, something unexpected was about to happen. On the other side, the Thebans, led by an almost unknown general, were preparing to face the most feared war machine in Greece. They lacked the same prestige and military tradition. Yet, within a few hours, Sparta would face the most shocking defeat in its history. For centuries, the Spartan Phalanx was synonymous with invincibility. Unlike other Greek peoples, who saw war as a temporary necessity, Sparta shaped its citizens for combat from birth. Every man was trained to become part of a collective machine where the individual almost disappeared in the name of unity. In the phalanx, warriors stood side by side, forming a living wall of shields and spears. The secret lay not only in physical strength, but in absolute discipline. When a Spartan retreated, it created a fatal gap. Retreat was therefore not an option. A soldier either won or died on the battlefield. This reputation was solidified during the Persian Wars when the Spartans held firm against the Persians in battles such as Thermopylae. Later, during the Peloponnesian War, their discipline allowed them to defeat even Athens' naval power. In the eyes of the Greeks, the Spartan phalanx was a natural force, as inevitable as the rising sun. It seemed that no enemy, however numerous or daring, could break that wall of bronze.
After the victory over Athens in the Peloponnesian War, Sparta reached the height of its hegemony. With its undefeated phalanx and feared kings, the city began to dictate the rules across Greece. But this dominance quickly turned into resentment. Cities that had once been allies began to see Sparta as a tyrant, crushing any voice of independence. Among these cities was Thebes. Located in Boeotia, just a few days' march from Athens, Thebes had a long history of rivalries and unstable alliances. Always seen as a secondary power, the Thebans had a reputation for inconsistency. But in the early 4th century BCE, they began to strengthen militarily and challenge Spartan authority. Confident in its prestige, Sparta believed it would be enough to march into Boeotia to remind Thebes of its place. What the Spartans did not know was that a new type of leadership had emerged in Thebes. Men determined to prove that even the phalanx could bleed. Political tension and the desire for freedom ignited the spark that would lead to the Battle of Leuctra, the confrontation that would forever change the balance of power in Greece.
At the heart of the resistance against Sparta stood Epaminondas, an unlikely leader. Unlike the Spartan kings, raised from childhood solely for war, he was a man who combined military discipline with philosophical reflection. He saw intelligence and creativity as weapons just as powerful as the spear or shield. But Epaminondas did not fight alone. The people of Thebes carried a deep resentment towards Spartan hegemony. For a long time, Thebes had been seen as a secondary city, swinging between alliances and rivalries, lacking the prestige of Athens or the tradition of Sparta. This reputation for inconsistency had become a stigma, something the Thebans themselves wanted to overcome. Now, with Sparta imposing its dominance over Greece, Thebes found its motivation to prove it was capable of leading, not just obeying. Epaminondas knew how to channel this spirit. He organized, trained, and inspired his soldiers, showing that discipline and innovation could rival any tradition. Alongside them, an army emerged with the will to challenge the impossible. And it was precisely the combination of a general's genius and a people's determination that would pave the way to victory at Leuctra.
The Spartan phalanx was feared because it functioned like a human wall. Each soldier covered the comrade beside him with his shield, advancing in perfect sync. To defeat it, Cohesion had to be broken, something no one had managed until then. Epaminondas, however, spotted a hidden weakness. Traditionally, the Greeks arranged their phalanxes with uniform depth, 8 or 12 ranks, all balanced. Epaminondas broke this rule. On the left flank, where he would directly face the elite Spartans, he concentrated his forces into 50 ranks, a massive wall of spears that would crush the enemy line through sheer weight and density. The center and right flank were deliberately weakened, advancing diagonally, obliquely, to avoid an immediate clash. This maneuver, unprecedented at the time, turned the battle into a focused attack against the enemy's strongest point. It was as if Epaminondas was saying, "I won't defeat the entire Spartan army, only the part that sustains its glory." When that part collapsed, the rest would follow. This audacity not only surprised the Spartans, but shattered centuries of Greek military dogma. The secret of Leuctra was in fact the courage to reinvent warfare.
On the morning of 371 BC, the armies lined up on the fields of Leuctra. On the Theban side, around 6,000 to 7,000 Greek soldiers, including the legendary sacred band of 300 elite warriors, advanced under the command of Epaminondas. Opposite them, Sparta had roughly 10,000 to 11,000 combatants, including 700 full Spartan citizens, the elite feared throughout Greece, and less experienced allied troops. When the signal sounded, the Thebans caught the enemy by surprise. The center and right flank advanced slowly, avoiding a direct clash, while the left flank, 50 ranks deep, struck at the heart of the Spartan phalanx. The impact was devastating. The concentrated mass of Thebans broke the perfect balance of the Spartan formation, pushing the soldiers back. Shields clashed, spears shattered, and the enemy's confidence began to falter. Amid the chaos, King Cleombrotus I himself was killed, destabilizing the entire Spartan line. In just a few hours, the impossible happened. Greece's most feared warriors were retreating in defeat, proving that even the invincible phalanx could be broken through strategy, courage, and innovation.
The victory at Leuctra was not just a battle won, it was a revolution in the politics and geopolitics of ancient Greece. For the first time in centuries, Sparta, long considered a symbol of military invincibility, was defeated in open battle. The death of King Cleombrotus and much of the Spartan elite weakened the city's core power, leaving its allies demoralized and divided. Thebes, on the other hand, gained instant prestige and influence. The city was no longer seen as secondary and came to be recognized as a power capable of challenging any rival, especially Sparta. The sacred band and the remaining troops became symbols of courage and discipline, and the Theban people, previously marginalized in Greek history, experienced a surge of pride and national unity. Militarily, Epaminondas' triumph demonstrated the power of innovation over tradition. Concentrating forces at the decisive point proved far more effective than simply repeating tactics that had worked for centuries. Leuctra showed that strategic creativity, combined with courage and discipline, could turn the tide against larger and more feared armies. From that moment on, Greece would never be the same. The balance of power had shifted, and Spartan hegemony entered a period of decline.
The defeat at Leuctra marked the end of Spartan hegemony in Greece. For centuries, Sparta had dominated the Greek city-states with its disciplined army and unbeatable phalanxes. After 371 BC, however, Spartan power never fully recovered. The loss of its military elite and the weakening of allied cities opened the door for Thebes to take on the role of a central power, extending its influence over regions that had previously bowed to Sparta. But the shift didn't stop there. Spartan instability and the rise of Thebes created a power vacuum that paved the way for Philip II of Macedon. Taking advantage of a fragmented Greek landscape, Philip consolidated power, modernized his army, and later set his son, Alexander the Great, on a path of conquests that would transform the entire Mediterranean and the Middle East. Leuctra, therefore, was not just a military victory. It was a turning point that altered the political balance of Greece and triggered a chain of events that shaped the history of the ancient world for centuries. The Spartan Phalanx had fallen, and the race for Greek power would never be the same.
The Battle of Leuctra showed that neither tradition nor reputation guarantees victory. Sparta, invincible for centuries, fell to the innovation, discipline, and courage of a more strategic army. Epaminondas didn't just break the Spartan phalanx, he proved that creative thinking and careful planning can overcome numbers and brute force. Moreover, the victory elevated Thebes and its people to a new level of pride and influence, showing that history is shaped as much by ideas as by weapons. This lesson goes beyond war. In life, business, or any challenge, innovation and courage can turn the impossible into reality. If you enjoyed this epic story, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss upcoming videos about the greatest moments in history.